Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What is the most ridiculous reason your client filed divorce for? I had two couples come to me. They had been friends for nigh on 15 years. Husband A decided he liked wife B more than wife A. Wife A decided she likes husband B more than husband A. The reverse was also true. And husband B preferred wife A. Wife B preferred husband A. The couples had near identical assets in terms of value. They came to me all together. And I drafted 2 sets of paperwork. 2 default judgment hearings were set on the same day. The judge signed all the papers the same day. A week after that, they all went to a JP and remarried. The husbands swapped houses and they all went about their lives exactly as they had the week before. But each slightly happier. He loved his pinball machine collection more than her. Also, it turns out some pinball machines can be worth a shitty load of money. Not me, but my friend who specializes in family law. Wife wanted to divorce husband because he kept taking their dogs for walks while she was at work. Making it, unintentionally, so they'd rather cuddle the husband instead of her after a long day. I'm not a divorce lawyer. But this case appeared in one of my case books in law school. Bedu v Blood Dracu, http www. Courts. State. My. As reporter /3 series /2015/2015 25096. HTM. Basically, a couple got married but never lived together. Shortly after marriage, the husband dropped off the face of the earth and the wife had no way of contacting him. She didn't know any of his family and apparently the place he told her he worked at never heard of him. He disconnected his cell phone and she even hired a private detective to try and locate him with no success. Finally, she tried to file for divorce, for obvious reasons, but for service to be considered valid the defendant has to be physically handed service papers. Since she couldn't find out where he was, she couldn't even get divorced from him. She had to sue in court just to get permission from a judge to allow service through Facebook because that was literally the only means she had of contacting her husband. Divorce lawyer here. One client filed for divorce because he owed his bookie $70,000. He didn't want to leave his wife, but he figured he would get half the house in the divorce, which was worth $700. And pay his debts. He had already blew through their life savings gambling. He was the worst guy. I heard of a woman that had her marriage annulled because the groom insisted to bring his mother on their honeymoon. Then, on the honeymoon, the bride discovered the reason he wanted to bring his mother was to breastfeed him. Yes, the groom, a grown man, was still breastfeeding. My boss just got divorced. His wife was telling people one of her reasons was the amount of toilet paper he used. She was a super coupon clipper thrifty lady and would listen when he went to the bathroom to see if he was using too much TP. I had a friend in high school whose dad limited everyone in the household to 3 squares of toilet paper per trip to the bathroom. He told guests this too and said he counted. And I saw him go into the bathroom to do so after his son used it. Needless to say, I never went to her house again. I can't imagine how one would be fine limiting themselves to 3 squares when menstruating or after having a stomach bug or something. Super weird controlling behavior. My neighbor filed for divorce because he smacked his lips when he ate and slurped his coffee and soup. He thought if she didn't, she would end up in jail for battery. My co-worker does this when he eats anything. He's 26 years old and he's been called on it several times. Chew with your damn mouth shut. I've had to remind myself to stay professional when he does that. Being married to someone who slurps all the time would be torture. Not a divorce lawyer, but have done marriage therapy. Had a soldier stationed at Guantanamo Bay that met a local. Fell madly in love. They decided to get married so she could come with him back in the States once his tour was done. She was working on American dishes and was making spaghetti. He comes home from work one day, and she's making it. She puts the meat in, puts the canned sauce in, and then pulls an unlabeled bag out of the freezer and adds it to the sauce. At this point in the session, she's hysterically crying with broken Spanglish. She's trying to explain she didn't know any better. Through the hysteria he informs me her mother and grandmother told her if she wanted to keep her man, she needed to put her menstrual blood in his food. It was so hard to keep my composure. I was trying too hard not to gag. They both described they were madly in love. But he couldn't let it go. They ended up getting a divorce. Having done this for 14 years, I have found it 100% accurate that truth is stranger than fiction. Not a divorce lawyer. But there's this famous case that all law students know about. The wife asked for annulment of marriage. Because almost a year into the marriage, they still haven't had sex. The husband has been avoiding it for almost a year. And later on the court found out that he actually only has a 2-inch penis. I had a client file for divorce because every morning his wife would ask him how he takes his coffee. For 7 years. My mother-in-law divorced my father-in-law so she could have a fresh start with her dream job of teaching blind children to read. Double quote. Turns out, what she meant by that was, so destroy my father-in-law's pastor career by telling everyone he was abusive. So got married to the guy she'd secretly been carrying on with. He's a convicted child sex offender. She has grandchildren. She's in a state of complete denial. My dad split my mom because she takes too long to tell a story. He was actually having affair number 4,795,809,374 and that came out shortly after. But this was one of the main reasons he gave when they did a counseling session together. That is a bullshitty reason by a bullshitty person to cover up his bullshitty actions. But I lived with a guy who was unbearable for many reasons, just one of which was his desperation for attention, which caused him to literally take unnecessarily long pauses and say about 29 times while telling a story because he wanted to prolong the amount of time you spent your attention listening to him. It was real f***ing annoying. I was always dying to just walk away mid-sentence so I didn't have to listen to him pause and say anymore. He didn't help her put up a shower curtain. It may have been a straw that broke the camel's back situation though. Best reason. Cops showed up to tell her that her husband is a violent child sex offender and she's now aiding and abetting BC. Her house is next to a school. Lawyer here. One of mine that sticks out is that the husband and wife both played some sort of online role-playing game. Sort of like The Sims I think, but a little more elaborate and adult. Second Life maybe? I don't know anything about online games. The wife got heavily involved with the game. Like 10 hours a day. And wouldn't reduce her time playing no matter what he said. What tipped things over the edge however was that he set up a fake profile avatar and went online to stalk her in the game and found her avatar having sex with some random guy's avatar. Nothing ever happened in real life. Neither of them were exactly oil paintings to look at, but that was enough for the guy to initiate a very acrimonious divorce. Not a lawyer, but did spend 6 months costing legal aid cases for solicitors in the early 90s. This included many divorces. The most notable one was a woman divorcing her husband because he discovered he could talk to the dead on their honeymoon and then later spent all their money on spiritualist groups. That wasn't what made it notable. During the divorce, the woman left the house. At some point her husband approached her and claimed that as he was letting the house fall into ruin, it would be better for both of them if he sold the house and split the proceeds with her. She agreed to this without consulting her solicitor. A few weeks later the husband gave her a cute $5. She asked what it was for. It was her share of the house. He'd sold it to his sister for a cute $10 and kept living there. When she went to complain to her solicitors, she found they'd done the conveyancing for him. He'd deliberately used his wife's divorce solicitors and nobody at the firm had realized. Not a divorce lawyer. One couple that I am close to were in the process of filing for divorce. Papers were served and lawyers were involved. But the husband put down for one of his reasons why things were irreconcilable was because she would tea in his bathroom. I'm sure not exactly in those words. Happy to say that they worked through that issue and are still together. So husband and I are planning on building a house. We're looking at layouts. His mother pipes up that the plan we want is no good as it only has one bathroom and she doesn't want to share when she comes to visit. Serious. She wanted her own bathroom in someone else's house and said it like 3 times. Newsflash. She ain't coming to visit. Heard this one while mobbing for deployment. Guy signs over power of attorney to his mother before leaving. As soon as he was out of the country, mother files for divorce of the wife because they never got along. Dude is in the middle of the desert and didn't know until he came back in 3 weeks after the fact. Not a lawyer, but a friend of mine divorced her husband because his DCK was too big. They were dating about 6 months. Got a courthouse wedding and separated about 6 months after. She said it was fun at first but the sex became too much work. She said it took a lot of preparation. Apparently, as well, he was pushing for some butt stuff. When she first told me offhand, I refused to believe it. She showed me a picture of them dancing at their reception and holy shit, was this guy packing heat. I have a client whose wife filed for divorce because my client hasn't successfully quit smoking yet. That's not ridiculous. It is kind of. He had quit, but then slipped up and had 1 cigarette and she immediately filed for divorce. I get people not wanting to be with a smoker, but you married him like that and quitting is hard. It is definitely not the real reason she wants a divorce. A friend of the family got divorced by her husband because she couldn't outperform him on the golf course. We all think he was cheating and just wanted an excuse, but she did say he would often yell at her in public while golfing and mock her for her attention to D. My dad has been married several times, more than 4. His last wife asked him to rub her feet and he said no. She told him to get the FCK out. He was super excited and said okay bye. You will hear from my attorney. Obviously that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Makes me laugh every time someone asks why did they split up. No feet rub for you. Not a lawyer. In my 20s, back in the 80s, I met a friend's friend who married and ended those marriages, not sure how, divorce or annulment, for fancy parties, wedding receptions, money gifts, wedding gifts, and vacations, honeymoons. She would get married and immediately upon return from the honeymoon, end the marriage and off to find the next guy. In the 7 years or so that I knew of her, she'd been married 4 times. Hopefully soon to be former divorce attorney. I've seen tons of crazy reasons for people to get divorced. Some of them stupid. Some of them make perfect sense. I had one person get divorced because her husband wouldn't take her out to the movies anymore. I had one client who looked through her husband's phone and found out he was hiring male escorts while he was on business trips. One female client got a divorce because she hated sex with her husband. Her last relationship before she got married was pretty intense and I guess her husband just didn't match up. I've had a few clients who were teachers get divorced because their spouses found out they were having indecent relationships with students. All of the teachers were female. One divorce involved an elderly couple who had both recently been widowed. They had both been married to their individual spouses for over 40 years. They married each other out of loneliness. About 2 years into the marriage, they realized they made a huge mistake. They couldn't stand each other. It was weird seeing 80-year-olds complaining about the same thing you see kids arguing about. My wife divorced me because I had her arrested for domestic assault. She's in childcare, so it was absolutely imperative that she control the narrative. Apparently I am a liar. The cops are liars. The children are liars. The baby got smashed itself over my back. The video of her doing these things are also lying. So divorced I got for hanging out with all these liars. I once had a woman that wanted to contest a divorce filing. The husband filed an uncontested divorce and forged her signature. We sought to vacate the divorce. The weird thing is, there were no children or assets to be divided, and she wanted to be divorced from him. Yet she insisted the divorce be vacated and the process be started over again and done properly, even though in the end everything would be the same and she will just have expended more money. He forged her signature on a court document if she didn't contest in order to have it vacated. That forgery would stay on file as a true acceptable variation of her signature and reduce her odds of fighting back when he inevitably forged her name again. One of the two had a problem with the IRS. Divorcing would shield some assets, as long as they were awarded to the other party in the divorce. I don't know how it was supposed to shield assets. And client said they lived apart a lot. I didn't want to look into it too deep, in case I ended up in some sort of fraud. I made client give me enough info that it was plausible they could divorce. Also, there were the airline pilots in the news a while back that were about to lose some of their pension. But if they got divorced, their ex wouldn't lose the benefits. Turns out that marriage fraud is a thing, but divorce fraud isn't. They gave their spouse the retirement, but stayed together like they were still married. Brilliant. I'm the product of a divorce. My parents finished who got my brother and I in 6 months. It took them 3 years to decide who got the cats. Not sure if that's what you were looking for though. Y'all make me feel like I could get a divorce and be okay with it. Most of these reasons are way more petty than why my wife and I are going to counseling. Nah, divorce is painful and awful. And these things are going to happen in any relationship. The reasons listed in this thread are the straws that broke the camel's backs. And it seems like in most of these stories, something else was simmering beneath the surface. Good luck in counseling. Though, my husband and I are in marriage counseling too. And I sure hope we can work out our issues, because I love him pieces. My mother-in-law divorced my father-in-law after 36 years of marriage and him caring for her with a chronic illness and being a great father to her 2 sons from a previous marriage, as well as his own son with her, my husband. And her reason was because he didn't pay attention to her. He is on the autism spectrum and was working 3 jobs to pay for her shopping addiction. Her real reason? She met a guy at a bar, started sleeping around, got approved for disability and moved out the day her back pay was deposited, about 20k. Needless to say, Phil was completely taken off guard by this. She never told him anything was that wrong. He thought they were happy. She doesn't talk to my husband or I anymore because when we found out she'd been cheating on Phil, we found out because she demanded hubby meet new guy after the divorce. Hubby said no. And guy yelled at Mill for making him look stupid. New guy yells at her. She tells us things about him that make us worry a bit. She was in an abusive relationship when she was 16-22 with a guy that almost killed her. She has scars on her neck from it. And met Phil a year after she'd finally left. We point out that new guy seems abusive and encourage her to be careful. Yeah, but divorces suck. Phil is now happily married to a lady from his hometown in Mexico. Mill is no longer with guy she left him for.